So, ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich zum heutigen Art Talk auf der Kunstmesse in Düsseldorf. Als allererstes möchte ich mich bedanken bei Ute Weingarten und ihrem Artpress-Team, die die Talk-Formate für die Messetage vorbereitet hat. Wir werden das Gespräch heute auf Englisch führen. Ich hoffe, das ist in Ordnung für Sie. Ich werde zwischendurch auch Sie als Publikum mal befragen. Wenn Sie Fragen haben, können Sie sich gerne beteiligen. Und möchte jetzt zunächst meine Gäste vorstellen. So today's talk is about the question of how important digital tools have become in the collecting art world. And we have three really fantastic collectors here on stage, which makes me very happy. First of all, next to me is Alain Servais. He is one of the biggest collectors from Brussels and will introduce his thesis later on in some kind of keynote. Then we have Florian Peters Messer from Düsseldorf, so this is your home base. He has a big collection, and of course we have Carolin Scharpff-Striebich. I mean, you have been in the collecting world for many years through your parents, and I'm very happy, Carolin, that you're here too. So first of all, we don't get into the collections as such because we have a special topic for these few days here at the art fair. And first of all, I would like to start with you, Alain. I mean, you have prepared a little sheet that we could maybe show, the slides. No? You haven't. So, yeah? Okay. I don't know whether you didn't prepare it. Oh, okay. I thought, well, we'll start with that. So I think we have a little technical problem here, but it's not a big deal. We start with that because, Alain, you have a very strong opinion when it comes to the question of how the digital world has or hasn't influenced you by collecting art and looking at art. Maybe you can give us some ideas of what your brain is.
The subject of, I don't know if you hear me well, the subject of social media is everywhere in society, and computers and iPhones are everywhere. But I think it's very important to think about why we're doing this and to take control back of our life. I had a very nice quote of a journalist in Ireland saying that social media and internet he was trying to compare it. He didn't know whether it was worse than the plague or worse than heroin as a drug. And it was as destructive as this. So he thought that internet was a very bad idea and very bad concept. So it's very interesting to ask ourselves, because we are inundated with a lot of kind of feeling of pleasure coming from social media and digitalization. So I thought it was very important, before we speak about the way we could involve social media and digitalization into art, to think, what do we want from it and what is it? And so my second slide was to refer to eventually something which is very important to me and very much driving my interest in art, is the allegory of the cave by Plato. Who knows the allegory of the plague by Plato? Can you raise your hand, the one knowing it? So I'll do briefly what it is. It is remarkable that someone 2,500 years ago thought about our situation in the world as we were chained at the bottom of a cave. And all we see in front of us is a wall with shadows. And what it is that we don't realize that we don't see the real thing. So the objective of life from Plato at the time, in fact from Socrates that he was referring to, is to try to get out of the chain, stand up, start looking at the lights, and then it hurts because it's the first time that you see the light in real. So it's a painful process. And eventually walk out of the cave. Eventually you then see reality as it is, and then if you are a good person, you go back in the cave and you try to convince the other people to try to stand up and get out of that cave. What is this allegory very important is that I think that today social media and internet in general are a kind of a drug which is given to us like if we were in that cave and we live in somebody else's life because we are set to look at things in a certain way, we get dopamine, everything is done that we get satisfaction because we get some likes, that we have some remarks, that we have more friends, we think we have more friends. So I think it's very important to understand that social media and digitalization is not done for the original good of things. Most of the time it is for commercial purposes. So I came in arts to try to understand the society better. So I'm a little bit worried in the way social media and digitalization is used to make it supposedly easier or more pleasant, but less deep in many ways. One element which worries me particularly is that when you get into social media, whether it's Instagram or any other forums, you get immediately into algorithm. An algorithm is supposedly what's taking into account what you liked before and what you're going to like next. But the problem is it's keeping you in everything you liked. So how are you going to discover something else? My definition of art is a language which opens your heart to the other. The other is a big O, is anything which is not you. And that's one of my question mark about digitization and social media is how are we going to get out of that cave rather than being stuck in the cave, getting fed with Uber Eats and other kind of shot of information.
Alain, I think this is a very strong statement to begin with, because obviously we live in a world which has been digitalized in communication, in perception, and in the way we actually see things. I mean, how is it for you? Because obviously Instagram, for example, what you refer to, Alain, has become such a strong power now for the arts as well. Because, I mean, you as collectors, I'm sure you get information all the time by galleries, by museums, by artists themselves. Does it affect the way you look at art?
Well, how does it affect? At first, I think if I compare it with the 90s years, like 20 years ago, my luggage bag from the Art Basel was always very heavy, because I always carried this fat book with me where it has all the addresses and telephone numbers of the galleries in it, because I needed the information to contact them. Now it's like information getting is very easy. And I think it's a little bit less joyful to collect, because everything becomes so easy to everybody. And it was more difficult, and you had more time to decide, you had more time to think. Now, I am a really slow looker. I'm not somebody who sees a work and says right away, I want to buy it. So in my actual habit of collecting, it doesn't really affect me.
So just to continue on that point, so if you get a picture sent, for example, of some piece of work, does it affect you in a sense that you think, oh, this looks interesting, I want to see it in real, or do you look for a different way of getting to know the new art that might be interesting for you?
So normally our collection is mainly paintings, and every time if I looked at a PDF I made a mistake, because I'm looking like a new work of Albert Oehlen and I said like, I don't know, it's not so good as it used to be, and I didn't buy, and as I went there later on I said, what a mistake, it's so much deeper than on the PDF. So now I learned not to look at the PDFs anymore.
Right. How is it with you?
Switched on, I think so, yes. Okay. Oh yeah, now it's fine. Yeah, it affects. I think everybody is affected about digitalization. I think that's for real. I know that's evident. Okay. What I find is interesting is what you say, that everything is getting more speedy, faster. So you feel yourself very often, I think, under pressure somehow, because you get all the previews, the information about works, and then I find it sometimes a bit stressful that you have all these information which you have to look at. You kind of feel obliged to look at it, because when you go to the art fair or to a show, then you must be quick in order to get it, because somebody else may have bought it. This is one thing which I really dislike very much, because I don't want to be stressed in this process of decision, of coming out to find an artist or a piece of art. On the other hand side, I find it's a very good means of information, of course, because you cannot grasp and work through all the information. If you could just go to an art fair, you have to go there for a couple of days in order to see everything. And of course you can make a kind of pre-choice already, that you say, okay, I would like to have a look at this position, this gallery, or whatever. Personally, for me, it's not that important, I would just want to say, because my collection is very much focused on, not very much focused on painting, and I think painting, of course, is very easy to transport via digital media, although one can make mistakes, of course, many mistakes.
Always.
Always, yeah. But as I'm very much interested in photography, video, and installations, that you have to grasp, and that you have to see really in real, in order to understand what it's about. I think it's more complex, even more complex. Yeah. That's what I think, sorry.
Yeah. But that's surprising, because I think with video, it's very easy, because you get a code, you sit at home and you look at the same video you would see in a show, in a museum. So I always think that's easier to buy, but we are that digital.
Yeah, but still, then it always depends on how is it presented. Have you a video booth, a box, or a big black room where you have a completely different physical experience of that piece, if it's with sound. So, of course, you understand what it's about, but I think you can make the same mistake like with painting, I guess.
But I think it's interesting what you're saying, because you said, oh yeah, but it's difficult video. I mean, it's difficult to show, difficult to enjoy at home. But the question is then to ask yourself, why are we collecting? I mean, I'm not collecting in some way, to be honest, for my pleasure. I'm trying to collect works which I think are worth preserving for the future. And there's no doubt, in my opinion, if you look at any museum biennial shows, and that's why I'm not collecting any paintings either, zero. I don't see any relevant painter in the last 20 years that is worth preserving for the next generation. But many of the public prefers this medium because it's more comfortable. But that's another subject, I think.
Yeah, because this is what
it's another subject. But I would like to come back on the PDF, like Florian. Personally, I don't read any preview. It's simple. They're all going direct to the trash. So if the galleries are here, please take me out of your previews, because I don't need them. It's spoiling my pleasure. And also, as I'm not, you must understand that the fair system and the gallery system is a commercial system. It is using social media to give you pressure to buy faster. But in fact, you have time. They are creating stress, like Florian says, but they're creating the pressure, and that's exactly what you don't want to have. So the only way is not to be on there. So I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on Facebook, and I don't look at previews. So does it make me a dinosaur? I like to be a dinosaur then.
But the one thing that you mentioned, Florian, is obviously the pressure that you feel, because, maybe a piece of work that you find interesting might be sold. I mean, the globalization obviously has
There's always another one. There's always another one.
Yeah,
don't worry.
I want to continue.
There's always another one.
But for me, the major question is what you just said is for painting. How does the perception part of a piece of work has slowly grained into our perception that it has changed, although we don't even want to have it being changed. You know what I mean? Because we are in a flow of images all the time, and the question is, do we still have the ability, or do we go into the danger of losing the ability to concentrate on one piece of work?
Get out of the cave.
Exactly, but can we still?
Yes, it's a question of yourself, It is discipline. Don't give up to that system. It's as simple as that. And that's why I'm a little bit worried for art, is that art used to be, as Florian was saying or you're collecting since the 1990s. It was much slower. Nobody cared about art. Art fair existed, but they were mostly professional things. So now the big problem is that art is taken over by the commercial system. It's becoming a commodification. and then we're using the same commercial media or the same commercial ways to sell art. And we have to resist that. And this is our responsibility as collector to try to slow down, say, I have the time not to be worried to miss one. Because, sorry, if I had to buy everything I like, I would buy 400 works a year. I can only buy 70, so...
Yeah, but coming back to this question, do you think that, I mean, this is a kind of danger that we might see, but do we really have the ability to kind of get out of that system? Because it has developed so quickly, so fast, and it's so much there now.
So I think for me, I try to slow down also, but I have more the problems that this whole system affects the price very strong. Because, you know, all the artists, they are like shown on Instagram, so everybody knows that's an interesting artist, and the demand goes up and the price goes up. And this is, for me, much more difficult to deal with.
I think, generally speaking, I think it's like if you have a fast car, if you have a fast car, you can drive with 300 kilometers on the motorway and kill yourself, or you just like use the car as a vehicle in the proper sense that you want to come from A to B. I'm not talking about Greta questions. But I think it's the same with digitalization too. If you can, I think we are able to use it thoroughly and with understanding of what is behind it. And that everything, of course, is part of a commercial system, and that digitalization focuses on this commercialization of the art market even more stronger. I think that's evident. We all understand that. But the question is our responsibility for ourselves, not only mentally, but intellectually, to say, hey, I just use this instrument to that extent where I can use it myself without being abused. And I think the question really is, yes, we can cope with it. And I find it a bit too dramatic to say, does it affect the way of like production of art or looking at art? Yes, of course it influences it. But everything has influenced art in any time, in any times. The Medici have influenced art, and the popes have, and the development in the late 60s has developed art. Yeah, why shouldn't internet or digitalization how can it not influence art? It will, of course, but we need sociological, political movement in our society, in our world.
To go on what Florian is saying is that, contradicting a little bit what Carolin, I'm sorry, it was just been introduced 5 minutes ago, so I'm so sorry. So the impact of digitalization, one of the biggest impacts, is to create a massive gap between the commercial value of art and the cultural value of art. Very important for you to understand. Commercial value of art is Nicola Party selling for 700,000 euro when it's a piece of shit. Okay? The thing is that you have another artist which is worth nothing, but is culturally much more important because maybe it's a medium that people don't like. So the big gap is there. I give one example. There has been some guys creating fake digital arts. So it's reproducible to infinity. The guy's got lines in every newspaper in the world for this. This piece, which was estimated at $30,000, sold for $400,000 when it was not only ugly, but stupid. The thing is, if you go like this, you are a victim. So I go back to my cave. You are really the poor victim in that cave. So if you want to be a victim, you just swallow all those things that, oh, suddenly this guy is very hot. Oh, the price is 30,000, and tomorrow it's going to be 50,000, and tomorrow and after it will be 100,000. For me, it's very simple. It's a signal to say, I don't touch. And then I would like to go back because there's a guy, for example, a gallerist in New York, Mitchell Algus, he will open an exhibition next week of works that he bought specifically on eBay or Amazon. Okay? So very cheap. So he will show them in a gallery, and then you will see, is it better or worse than something you would see at Gagosian in many ways. And again, it is your responsibility as art lovers or art collectors. Do I buy this manipulation of raising the price because blah, 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 you know, Brad Pitt has been seated with him, or Kim Kardashian did a selfie with that painter, or whatever you want to be. I mean, if you want to be that kind of victim, go ahead. But then there's another sentence describing the world as it is right now. It is a nation of sheep owned by pigs and ruled by wolves. So you decide what world you want to live in, but it is the world that, you know, that big corporation system, big media and so on wants to get. Or you extract yourself.
I mean, but on the other hand, if you think about the fact that collecting art has become a lifestyle over the past few years, and a lot of people are collecting art because it's cool to collect art, the collector herself has become a celebrity. So, and collectors, you know, you sit on panels, you have your Instagram accounts, you are interviewed in many magazines. So in some ways, how difficult is it on the one hand to be clear that the art is the focus and not I am the focus. The art is the focus, my collection, the artists in the collections are the focus. And I mean, to be honest, everybody is has a narcissistic personality. Most people have. So, you know, obviously it's also nice to be kind of in this art world a person that seems to be loved for whatever reason. So how difficult is it for you as a collector to also get yourself out of that you are the one who wants, you know, you are in the center of things, sometimes more than the art itself?
Let's say it this way, this is one thing I'm really not interested in, because my focus is really the content of what I'm collecting. Unfortunately, I'm collecting quite difficult stuff, so I always have to read books to really look very precisely on that what interests me. So it's evident that I have to focus on the art, and it doesn't make sense to focus on myself by that. It's always an intellectual and emotional challenge in collecting. And of course, on this base, it's very personal. But of course, everybody is vain. Everybody has a certain part in his personality of narcissism. That's for sure. But as long as it's not maligne, I think that's fine. But I think for me, it's very important, and that's what I like about collecting art as well, is that I can share this experience with you here on this panel, with other people who are maybe interested in having some information from those crazy people doing what we do. And that's something I find that is the positive part of being more celebrity as other people are, of course, but that's it's not only an advantage, but it's a responsibility to stand here and to say, hey, that's my opinion, that's that's what I think about it, and I would like to share it with you. And I think this is not vain, but I'd say more or less positive.
So in some ways you feel a responsibility, is that right? How would you perceive that?
So I think if you are well regarded as being a good collector, that's nice, because this means that you do something responsible. But like with our collection, we cooperate with 5 public museums here in Germany. And this is always something that makes you very humble, because you come with the new works you bought, and you're always, you know, these works you buy with your heart, and it echoes with you. And then you show it the art historian, and they go like, well, I don't know, we have to think about it. So this really puts you back, not to be vain. And I know I do many mistakes.
And one of my mentors, Baudouin Michiels, is a historical collector in Belgium. He said this, and it's very important, because you introduce us as great collectors, but what does it mean? And we have some notoriety because we're sitting here. What does it mean? Because he said you cannot judge a collection before 30 years. it's only in 30 years that you're going to be able to judge. When you see, for example, I was at K20, K21, the Konrad Fischer collection. It's only 30 years after that you can judge if it's a good collection or not. So it's impossible for us to know what it is, but it's very important. But this remark that he made helped me to make my decision. One of the questions I ask myself every time I buy a work of art is, do I stand a chance that someone will want to look at this in 30 years' time? And that really helps to clean up a lot of the painting. Do I stand a chance that someone will want to look at this in 30 years' time? You go to K20, you see the Max Beckmann, the Kirchner, the Kandinsky, the everything, and you say, no, I mean, this doesn't stand the thing. But then you go on the KOW stand booth.
On Instagram, for example. Why? Because we're talking about the content of art, that we're talking about art. On the other hand side, for example, if you have a show, an exhibition, or you have pieces you give to a museum for an exhibition, if you spread the news via Instagram, that is very good advertising. And I must say, regarding that, I'm really using that tool as a tool, and not as a menu where you can see what you can eat in the evening.
I mean,
I do the same. I have an Instagram post too for our family collection, because all the people always ask me where do you have rooms? So I always had to mail them, now we have a room in this museum, now we have a room in that museum. And then I thought I would do it on Instagram, and so everybody can see where we show in public parts of our collection. And I like to stand behind our artists.
Talking about the artists, we had a discussion yesterday with artists, and one of them was telling us about the pressure that artists feel nowadays to actually present themselves on Instagram, because everybody does. So my question is, because they also not only feel the pressure to represent themselves, but also because there is such an interest in their work in the global market that they have to produce even more than they ever had before. So when you speak to the artists that you collect, do you think something has changed in the way you discuss their work with them? Has something changed the way they feel under pressure to produce work rather than to make work?
No. Sorry, I just say no. I must say, those artists I've been discussing this. Of course, there is a kind of the stress we have when we have the previews from the galleries. But those artists I've been talking to, I'd say no. I think the pressure is even bigger if big American collectors, for example, put a focus on a specific artist, and then they want to have many, many, many pieces, and then they get 20 or 25, and then all of a sudden the studio is empty. That is the biggest. I think that is the bigger pain, because then, of course, they want to sell their piece. They need to, because they're living from that. But all of a sudden the studio is empty, everything is sold out, and then everybody says, hey, that huge family collection in the US is collecting that artist, we want to have it too. And then it's getting more expensive, and the hype is getting up, and then they have a hype about this artist, and then I think the danger is really big that the artist is under pressure by that, but not via Instagram. That's not something I experienced, but maybe I'm completely wrong.
But I think that the artists are under a stronger pressure, because there are so many art fairs, for example. I think we have 360 art fairs over the whole world. And, some galleries really take part in a lot of them, and then they have to make works.
Interesting, different point of view that you have on this. So, as Florian is not buying painting, the artist is concerned with don't care and don't feel so much pressure. But the ones who are in the commercial circuits, which are the painters, unfortunately, because of the social media, you could say there are 360 fairs. So you say, so they cannot produce, but it's only if it's the same artists which are shown in every single art fair. Because there are probably 40 million artists. So if the commercial system of Instagram and social media makes it that everybody focus on the same artists, then those artists are under pressure. Then the worst is that the artists that are not taken in the system, they look up and they say, wow, this guy just bought a new Ferrari. And me, I still am going on the subway or something like this, and it's leaking from my roof. So maybe I should change the way I paint to look more like him. And then there's a overwhelming sense. And for me, one of the things worrying me in that new system is that the art is looking more and more like the same. Sooner or later, everyone needs to go to painting, because it's very interesting, and Florian will agree with me, that you have guys that have been doing performance and photography. I take an example of Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney did 30 years career doing performance and everything. Then, you need to go to the bank at one point, because otherwise no one will buy it. So why not doing a show of painting at Hauser and Wirth? How nonsense is it? Paul McCartney doing painting. And they were horrible. But it doesn't matter, they sold out at Hauser and Wirth. So the big problem is, again, we have to understand we are in a system which is manipulating our taste for commercial advantage. This is the truth. You cannot escape from it. So either you're a victim of it or you're a participant.
But this was my introduction question. How difficult is it not to be manipulated? Because if you, for example, look at the Instagram accounts of the Biennales or the Documentas, there has been a creation of this word, Instagrammable art. And this is the perversion of everything, that in some ways you see always the same images that are kind of flashy, that have an immediate effect. And the question is whether is that the dead end, or is that something that you have to in some ways go around? And basically what you all say, when I understand you rightly, is you have to do your own thing, right?
And it's always a question of your own intellectual decision. That's the only thing I can say. Of course, we are all part of society. And of course, we are all influenced by things which happen around us. But still, as long as we can think, and we just don't stop thinking, reading books, and being critical with ourselves as well. And what does something do with me? And if you just grasp it and just swallow it, if you just swallow something without thinking about it, then I'm very much with you with the cave thing by Plato, of course. Then you are really trapped within something really which is influencing you without your awareness. But sorry, we are all not stupid. We have that's not. Sorry, I think that is it's an obligation, it's a responsibility, and I think art is the best motor of being intellectually open-minded, interested in unknown things, in dangerous things maybe too, and which really makes it possible that we are not living in the cage. So that is really the open door to get out of the cave.
And I think what else we have to talk about, that this whole system is, we always say it's the effect from Instagram, but the galleries are doing this too. The galleries tell the performer, make something we can buy. It's not Instagram. That's, the commercial partners.
On that point, because there's always that question, as you see, I'm a little bit critical of the system. So I could say, the fair is the bad boy, or the gallery is the bad boy. But let's not forget that they are only showing this because this is what the public wants. And it cost them maybe 50,000 euro to get that booth here that we have here. And of course, they need to cover their costs because they need to pay their school of their children and so on. They, like every one of us, they need to find the money. So if they had the choice, maybe they would choose something else to exhibit. But they need to do what, and I keep sending back the responsibility to the viewer. And I'm 100% agreeing with what Florian said. It is our responsibility. And read again the allegory of the cave. Read it and read it again. And then decide what life you want to live. And yes, of course, galleries are trying their best. And some galleries are making more efforts to try to educate us than others. Some others are just feeding us with sugar. I mean, we know that putting sugar and salt is the way to make something eatable. So, and it's the same. But it is our responsibility as a viewer to make the effort.
So when you collect art and you find a new position, an artist that you've never seen before, you haven't seen it on Instagram, you haven't seen it elsewhere. Is that still possible?
Sure, yes.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, of course, because that's what we have Kunstvereine, museums and all this for. I think our, how can I say, our education of looking at art does not depend on art fairs, but on good museums, good Kunstvereine, a big hoch of Kunstvereine, please. We have a wonderful structure here in Germany. And of course, of very good gallery work within solo shows they are doing. And you always have the opportunity, the possibility, the possibility to see something so interesting. If you go here in Düsseldorf at Henrike Naumann, you could see, I cannot name it, there are so many good shows. And there you can really do something for your own education. We don't need that art fair for that.
And you always get good hints by artists. That's always very valuable too.
Of course it's possible to find artists you don't know. The thing is, again, do you trust your own tastes or you need someone else's validation? You need someone to post it on Instagram to buy it, or you say, oh no, I like it, I like the idea behind the content and everything, and then I go for it. Even if it's 5,000, it's very horrible, but I was speaking to a European gallery going to NADA in Miami. And they said, last year was really painful because I showed works and collectors were coming and looking at it and saying, wow, that's very interesting, very nice. What's the price? $6,000. It's so cheap. It must not be good. Oh, sorry. Come back. I mean, can you imagine the stupidity of the system? In the US, it's the worst market for this. But this is an actual case of a gallerist telling me the price was not high enough.
But it's interesting because, you seem to be all very self-confident collectors, and you trust yourself, and you trust your taste, and you trust your immediate, or then obviously the narrative that kind of is created between an art piece. But how difficult is it actually to come to that point? Because obviously when you, for example, start collecting or when you get interested in the arts, you are easier maybe manipulated by all those different platforms that we have. So how did you gain that strength? Is it to kind of, the experience? Is it because you are self-confident? Where did you gain it?
I grew up with art. My parents were already art collectors, so I think that's, I did all the mistakes together with my parents. I'm still doing mistakes, and that's how you gain your self-confidence with time, over many years.
I think for me, I made so many mistakes. I'm not coming from a collector's family, so I made so many mistakes. And you start I know, for example, how very, very difficult it was for me some 20 years ago to really say, okay, it's not the tafel, the painting you're interested in. And the first acquisition of a Thomas Hirschhorn work piece was such a pain because it was so difficult for myself psychologically to say, okay, no, you can dare to do that because it's such an important, interesting artist. Do it. Oh my God, that was difficult. And I think it's a kind of development you go through. Everybody. It's the big advantage of getting older. Like, of course, 20 years ago, I had another point of view. I had lesser experience, and I understood less about art market, about galleries, how do they work. I was intimidated getting into a gallery because I thought, what do they think when I go there? And of course, as we are getting older, it is very helpful and seeing very, very much. Just take the opportunity and see as much as you can. And of course, once the pieces you have in your collection are on loan to a museum, that makes you happy, and that is the self-confidence that you can say, hey, your education, your taste, and that what you think about art is not that bad, or it's that good that the museum says, hey, we would like to show it. And that this is, I think, That's for myself, that's the point where confidence comes from.
I think there's a part of, you say, how do you get there? I think there's an element of personal nature. To the question that everybody asked me, what would be the advice you would give to a young collector? Classical question. I say two things. First of all, don't buy what you like. Buy what you don't like. First thing. The second is, look at yourself in the mirror. Are you able to step outside of your comfort zone? I mean, if you were losing a bet with a friend of going around ART Düsseldorf with a canary costume, yellow, would you die doing it, or would you do it with a smile?
I would possibly die.
I would do it without hesitation. So that's the difference that makes. And if you meet a lot of collectors, I don't know, I'm thinking about Harald Falkenberg in Hamburg. I mean, what a character. And this guy would be collecting, of course, and then my partner in life is taking care, organizing trips for collectors and so on. And sometimes she's looked at all the collectors in the group and said, the art world is fantastic because they are keeping those crazy guys under control. So it is part of my neurosis that find a positive outcome in art. Because maybe I would be a serial killer otherwise, so I don't know.
Okay, so unfortunately we are almost at the end of the discussion, and I said in the beginning you can ask questions, so somehow we got run away here. So are there any questions from you in the audience to one of the three? No? Okay. Yeah?
My name is Timo Miettinen. I am also an art collector, and I have to say very openly that I have been sometimes buying some artworks only because I saw the picture in Instagram or in websites, and I have many paintings, and then it was me such a pleasure to see as the piece arrived to my home that oh wow, it was much better than I thought. What about you, Alain? Apparently you are not at all looking at Instagram, but what about you, Carolin and Florian? Are you buying also through Instagram, for instance, or having seen something there and it has been influenced so much that you have bought it without seeing?
I think I'm not following too many people on Instagram, so I'm not really looking what they're posting.
And all I can say is, I remember some years ago, I think 12 or 13 years ago, I bought a painting which was in New York by a Japanese artist because the gallerist sent me the image via email. So this is the only electronic thing I ever made, I'd say. By Instagram, no, I never did it. And okay, but then I must say, like, for this painting in New York, I sent a friend from New York there because I knew the practice of the artist quite well, very well. He said, hey, please go and have a look. Can I buy it or not? And then he went there and saw it physically and said, yes, it's a fucking good piece, get it. And that's what I did. But that's my only electronical experience.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Where?
Hello, I'm Peter Schiel from Duisburg, and I'm just interested, what does an artist have to do to get interested by collectors? So I think it's very difficult for artists doing good art, but they don't get found.
So I repeat it if you haven't understood it, audible. If an artist wants to be discovered and nobody sees him, how can he be seen? So if he's not in a Kunstverein, not in a gallery, so what is his possible or her possibility?
I do this kind of talk once a month, and there are always more artists than collectors or anybody else, because the one that are always trying to find question about their living is artists. So the question is quite difficult to answer in a proper way. First of all, like there are many art buyers, there are not many good collectors. There are many artists and there are not many good artists. There are too many artists in the world. That's the way I have to be honest with this. So your practice must be linked to, in my opinion, let's take an example of looking at what's going on in institutions. How do I answer that question? Do I stand a chance that someone will want to look at it in 30 years' time? One of the key elements is that you are speaking about something in the world of today. That's very important. You know, if you look, Max Beckmann, 1920s, 1930s, Kandinsky, which was part of the 1917 revolution in Russia. I mean, even the Impressionists, which were part of the Industrial Revolution of breaking the academy and the way society was structured, every important work of art is always linked to something about today. So, in my opinion, one of the key elements, and as you know, some artists are better at manipulating this. Because, for example, today it's very fashionable to be, for example, a gallerist said, nobody wants to hear what the white man, heterosexual, has to say. So, to be successful, you can be either not white, either not man, either not heterosexual. Okay? If you are any of those three, you're in trouble. Then I give you another example, which I love, absolutely fascinating, is that there was I will not tell you, there was a Chinese artist that appeared in the year 2000, and he was painting around Paris. And he was getting very successful. So successful because he was Chinese, painting Chinese stuff and everything, Mao with Warhol and stuff, and Coca-Cola stuff and everything. He had a lot of success. So all the newspaper wanted to meet him. He never wanted to give an interview. After 5 years of people digging into it, he said, okay, I'm giving up. I'm a French artist. Okay? I invented myself the personality of being Chinese because you wanted Chinese and not French. So, that's the terrible thing about being an artist today. So you need to keep honest to yourself and you need to express something. So the key thing is that you have something interesting to the world to express. And it applies the same for books, articles, movies, whatever you have to express. Is it something original? In my opinion, again, I have the impression that a good artist is someone that is absorbing all the energies of the world around you, like a fan. Everything going around, genders, politics, racism, environments, any sexuality, anything that is going around you. If you are a good artist, you will transform it in a beautiful work of art in different form, whatever the form, video, painting, but I don't believe in painting, but anything, installation, you will create that thing. If you are good, I'll be honest with you, nobody will want it. Okay? Because you are kind of a broken emitter. You're sending something that is so new that nobody gets it, except a few collectors, very few. Harald Falkenberg, Patricia Sandretto, whoever the big collectors are. And they will help you maybe to go on until the Kunstverein discover you and give you a show in some way. But it's really hard and you need to hang to yourself, but also, like in the cave, ask yourself every day, am I a good artist? Because I see so many artists that say, I'm Caravaggio. Sorry, I've got to tell you, do something else than art. So.
But Alain, don't you think a major problem that has occurred in this respect is that you have to be a courageous collector. Well, courageous, you have to be honest to yourself and open to what's happening in the world. But what about the gallerist? If you look at how the gallerist scene has changed over the years, that we have the big 5-10 players, and in the middle there's very little, and for the small galleries there's almost no possibility to survive. And these would be the ones who would actually show those maybe, pieces of work that are not so easily being sold, or how do you perceive that?
The way it works is that artists are supporting other artists. So it starts at the ground level. You are working in a studio, in a group of studio, and and you have artists around you saying, wow, what you're doing is very good, and then suddenly they make a group show of in a derelict house somewhere, and you're going to have Florian and me and Carolin going there, hopefully. We're going to go there and we say, wow, it's good. Or you're going to have another curator coming and they say, wow, I saw this guy there. And then eventually it will go. Again, it's not because you're at Hauser and Wirth that you are a good artist. Because I repeat again, massive gap between the commercial value of things you can sell, a nice shirt, a nice sweater, and the cultural value of things. So you can keep going until someone, you need to be shown. Go out, try to participate, be imaginative of where you are showing. Because then someone will pick you up. I'm always fascinated. I go to the Venice Biennial for 22 years. I go to the opening week. So there are, there are maybe 250 or no more, probably 300 artists shown in all pavilions and so on. What I find fascinating is whether you are white, black, yellow, red, homosexual, bisexual, heterosexual, you are Hindu, Islam, Catholic or something, after 2 hours, there starts to be a buzz around saying, oh, don't miss the Czech pavilion. Oh, don't miss the Nordic pavilion. Which means that for me there is still the possibility to recognize good art, whatever nature you are. So if you are good, you will come out. If you are really not getting out, ask yourself whether maybe there's a problem with you and not with the system.
But I still think it's always important to find a gallery because, all this is normally what the gallery is doing is that they look for group shows and then they talk to curators. And I find it's very hard for artists to promote themselves.
To answer maybe to the question in a different way, how can an artist draw my attention? It's the quality thing, of course, but it's when it hits my curiosity and that I'm scared, or that I'm just like, oh, what is going on? You don't understand anything, or that I say, oh, that's disgusting, or that frightens me. Then I know there must be going on something which is interesting, and then, of course, it's my curiosity, which sometimes kills the cat, but in this case it never killed me. But it made the world more interesting, and I found out so many interesting other points of views, other ways of looking at the world, and opened so many doors and windows to me. So if something is really strange to me, or frightening, or bizarre, or what's going on, then you can be sure that it will touch me and will make me really interested.
But don't think too much that you need the gallery system to go through, because the gallery system is under enormous pressure. Enormous pressure to sell and to survive by themselves. I had a case again. I had a big guy in the US. He's calling me, he said, I've been hired by a big gallery that was active in the 1970s and 80s. They're opening an outlet in Los Angeles. Can I come to you? Can you give me a list of 8 artists that you will recommend me to show in that exhibition? So I gave him the list of things I like. Then he looked at it and he said, oh, okay, you don't have anything more saleable? Saleable. And that's the big problem, is that you're going to have to do something saleable, which is nothing to do with art. So that's the problem of the gallery system. They have no choice. To exhibit here at ART DÜSSELDORF is 50,000 euro. That gallerist in Fiac, he had to pay 50,000 euro to sell something he had in his gallery. So you need to find alternative way, and that's why cities like Brussels, Berlin still, but Mexico, Jakarta, it's still possible to make group exhibition with artists and do that. You need to show yourself, go out, and people will pick you up at one point. But don't come. The gallery system is in a way to pay you rent, because you will then produce something saleable, and you will get you payday.
So, well, this was a very interesting discussion, I think, today. Very vivid, and I hope we go out with a lot of energy now. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much, Carolin, Florian, and Alain.